It's the mission of Big Walnut Schools to inspire and guide each student to his or her maximum potential. I'd like to call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind doing the roll call, please.
Mr. Crowell.
Here.
Ms. Storch.
Here.
Mr. Fuji.
Here.
Ms. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here. Item number 5, the minutes. It's recommended the board approve the minutes for the May 14 and 21, 2020 regularly scheduled board meetings. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sherry. Comments or feedback? I think we're good.
Okay. Mr. Fuji.
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch.
Yes.
Mr. Crowell.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes. And that brings us to item 6, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Wayne, can you hear me okay? We good? Okay. Want to start this evening by having our high school principal, Mr. Jados, join us for an update. Obviously, it's been a very long spring and early summer here, kind of waiting to see what we're able to do with both prom and graduation. So Andy's going to give us an update on that and then take any questions you have.
And Wayne, do you want me to pick it up, or am I to pick it up? Okay, hello. It's funny, I'm just not a lot of times around other adults, so this is already a night out for me. I did want to just touch base on graduation, the hard part, and we were hopeful that maybe something would come out today from the governor. That did not happen. It sounds like possibly next Tuesday we're going to get more information, but we're still, I don't want to say held captive, but we're still unable to really go forth with our plans because we don't know what we're allowed to do. What we've really worked on is a plan with multiple options so we can hopefully adjust in any situation that we're allowed to. So the biggest hurdle for us is going to be the mass gathering piece, how many people can get together. Right now it's still at 10. Now there's a gazillion exceptions to that, but unfortunately graduation is not one of them. So we're hopeful that number is either going to completely go away or if it's going to go to 300 or more. We feel that if it goes to 300, that starts to give us some wiggle room that we could do possibly 2 sessions and make that work. We have about 251, 52 graduating seniors. That number's going to go down a little bit with people that have additional plans. So we think it'll be close to hopefully just over 200, maybe a little bit higher, but we could make it work with 300. We'd have to have limited people there. We'd also have to limit how many people were in the stands, but that would give us 2 sessions. If there wasn't a limit, we would be in a great situation because, social distancing, we can spread out all our graduates across the football field. We could use the away side, the away bleachers if we needed to, and had them all, looking towards the school board. I think that's to the north. North-south's not one of my strengths, but I think it is. Towards the scoreboard, we'll just say. So that would give us that option to have both sides. We've possibly looked in the option of bringing in additional temporary restrooms if we needed to, because that's an issue potentially because we don't have very many on the home side at all. So I can go into more in the weeds on this, how we'd enter, how we'd leave, that type of thing. But we've shared this with the health department. Angie was a part of that meeting. Christina McDonough's done a great job. Our senior class advisor, graduation advisor. So I feel that if we're 300 or more, we can at least make it work, hopefully with 2 sessions, if not with 1. It's just all if we get the green light from, I guess, the governor and our health department.
And I guess I would add to that when we met with the health commissioner, she was very complimentary of everything that Andy and his team had laid out. She said, I could support everything on here except for the group size limitation. And as Andy mentioned, if there's a particular guidance document, it's what the health commissioner told us. So softball, baseball game, for example. There's a guidance document that specifically addresses it. They're allowed to exceed 10 people. Anything that doesn't have its own specific guidance document, the crowd limit is still 10. And so until that gets increased, and again, the local health department has that jurisdiction to enforce that, we would not be able to do the plan. But she is very on board with everything else. We're just kind of waiting on that number. And if that number, he mentioned 300, the reason for that we're hopeful that it will increase. Banquet halls are now allowed to have 300 people at a wedding, for example, but we are not permitted to have 300 people on our public football field. So hope, as Andy mentioned, and that'll be what we transition to after this, but it was very hopeful we'd learn a little more today with school next year, and hopefully that would give us some type of window into where we were headed maybe for this, but that got pushed back, and so that didn't help. But again, I feel like his team's done everything they can at this point until we get to a point of being able to have more people together for that.
And we've even, Lisa Houston did an excellent job. We have our alma mater, I think, 16 or 20 different singers, and they videoed it. You've seen those where they're all kind of almost looks like a Brady Bunch type thing where they're all on there at the same time, and it came out really well. We've got that song, so we can do it by video or live if we need to. We're doing the same thing with the anthem. We're right now currently doing auditions for speakers. We just did our first round this week with some really good ones. So we'll do the same thing there. We're going to video them if we have to, or we'll have them live. So like I said, we're trying to be ready for any option that we have. Obviously, we want to do it in person, especially the fact that we've waited this long. And that's what our students want. We really want to do that. But it just depends on what we're allowed to do.
And when you surveyed the kids, it was basically, we can do what everybody else is doing now with the small individual, or we can wait and hope we can do something in July, and if we have to do virtual, then we'll have to do it, but only if we're told we have to. So we kind of were pretty open about that a couple months ago. We have seen things really start to open up over the last couple months in the state, but unfortunately this piece that we need to kind of relax a little has not.
Yeah, and to the reference to that survey, over 75% of the students selected July 25th, wait till, have one in-person graduation. And that's even deceiving because the next highest option, that was well over 100. The next highest option was 9. And then all the other ones were like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, kind of the other part. So if you look at the pie chart, it just shows all the different slivers from people going, well, I'm going to be on vacation, or could we do this, or that type of thing.
You had a pretty high turnout for this.
I mean, we did. It was. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I know it was more than half the seniors. So, and even if we even looked at, even if everybody would have have been on the survey, and even everybody who wasn't there would have gone the other way, that still would have been the number one choice. And like I said, there's a lot of the details I haven't gone through, but we're even prepared if we need to use like a reserve seating site, like they'll do that sometimes with the spring musical or different things. If we even have to do that to make sure everybody's 6 feet apart and put families together, that type of thing, we're prepared to make that happen, or however we need to seat people. But like I said,
all the entrance points around the entire stadium and have people with times to come in. We talked about.
Yeah, if we have to, A through C will come in at this time in different groups, and then if we have to have more than one session, we'll make sure the first session is gone. And we haven't set a time yet for if we have to do more than one session, because we don't know for sure that's the case. But we kicked around, do you do one in the morning because of the heat, July 25th? I mean, it could be 90 degrees. Do we keep the 8 o'clock for the one and do it 10 a.m. for the other? But I did send the all-call out, I believe it was last week, to tell them that all these different things could happen. We might have to limit how many fans come. We might have to have more than one session. All those things I talked about were on the message.
I can tell you have an athletic background. Parents are now fans.
Crowd, yeah.
My only real question is, I can imagine with this class of 2020, it could go one of two ways, right? Some kids will say, hey, really haven't been in school since March. I don't necessarily want to attend graduation. I'm just moving on and I'm doing my next thing. Or it's going to be overwhelmingly everybody wants to be part of the graduation ceremony. Do you have a sense of?
I can tell you this. I can tell you that we've only had one student request their diploma. Or it might have been two. I kind of told the one we were just going to wait, and they were fine with it, and the other one had another situation, so we made that happen. But because it was a special circumstance. But so I guess it was two. But out of 250. It seems like they really still want that to happen, and every so often I'll hear from a student. I have 2 or 3 times in the last month and a half, I've met with our senior class officers and checked in with them. And I feel like they have a pretty good job. They have the pulse of the class for the most part. And they've been pretty good to kind of share with me what's going on. And they can, through our messaging apps, they can message me whenever they want, and they'll do that from time to time. So I feel for the most part, it's there. I've heard a little bit more from parents. I haven't heard a lot from students. They seem to be, for the most part, I think excited about it. It's that kind of that closure piece that it's been so long, but I haven't heard many that said they wouldn't come.
Thank you.
Could you address, I know at a previous meeting, Mr. Carl had a concern about our military students, and I know you reached out to them. Could you just maybe share with the board on that, please?
And that was part of our academic signing day. We added that about 3 years ago, that we made sure that anyone that got an academic scholarship and also anyone that was joining the military was honored at our academic signing day. And our academic boosters were a big part of that. So with this year, we did have a video that we made sure we acknowledged and recognized everyone that would have military and academic scholarships that would have been a part of that day. And then academic boosters were able to purchase a sign for every student that would have been honored that night. It's really an outstanding job, and there was a pennant on the side that either said the college or the Armed Forces branch that they would attend. So when we did the senior, the cap and gown pickup, we handed those out, and so that seemed to be received very well. I also contacted, there was at 1.5, but ended up being just 4, the 4 families that are all going to the military. I asked them if to make sure that they would be able to come to the ceremony. All but 1 could. 1 student joined. He actually didn't go through our counseling department or a normal recruiter because he went through ROTC, he went through Brooks McClintock, he went through Oklahoma State, through his college to go through ROTC. But he is, he's the one that will miss, but he's going to miss, he's gone for 2 months. And so I talked to his mom. Actually, I went out to the house, and so we had him assigned already for going to Oklahoma State, but we also brought him assigned for the military. So I went out to the house, talked to mom, and we are going to do when he returns in August, I've got a team that's going to come with me. We're going to go to the house and work with mom, and we're going to do a little ceremony there in the front yard, so to honor him. So the other 3 are all good. They're all planning on being there. And then we've started this last 3 or 4 years too, they get a medal for the ones that are in the military, and typically we have them stand up and honor them at the ceremony. So we've been in contact with all of them.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I do have a question now.
Yes.
Apparently, there's a waiver you can get from the health department, seeing as how Muirfield's gonna have 9,000 spectators 3 days before our scheduled graduation. Have you asked them for a waiver for that one clause that they're hanging on? Have you submitted the plans for graduation? If I understood you, you have, and they're okay with the plans. The hang-up is the 10 people, more than 10 people's mass gatherings. Have you requested a waiver?
Correct. I'll let Angie speak to that.
So, first of all, I didn't know there was an actual waiver, but I think it's because it's school property is one of the issues. But we didn't know of a waiver, but I think the language I used was, is there any way right now we can do this? I'm a little persistent, so I asked her several times, several different ways. And she just continued to say, not right now. I mean, I think everything you have planned on seating and people coming in and out and restrooms, like you've thought through every facet of it. But right now you cannot because of the seat number. I can reach out to her again and ask about a waiver, but I wasn't aware in that meeting that there was such a thing to even ask for it. I just asked, is there any way we can do it? And she said no. So I would think if we could have done a waiver, that would have been the time, because she seems fairly supportive, that she would have said, yeah, you can fill out a waiver. But I will ask if there's any chance, obviously, that we want to be able to do that.
Well, and I would, the 11 people mass gathering rule that's from the governor's office. But there's other school districts that somehow have had their in-person graduations. So that's the local, in other words, she has the authority to approve it.
Well, are you talking in this area or elsewhere?
For the
Anywhere in the
graduations.
state would be under the
Yeah, a lot of
mass
them did
gathering.
like their driving in or a part, like she let Delaware, they did like a parade and drove through. She said we could do that, but we surveyed the kids and that's not what they
I
wanted.
don't know of any
I don't
in
either.
Central Ohio that were an actual graduation.
Well, I saw on social media that Shelby did.
And I mean, I only know Central Ohio. I mean, that might be true.
Yeah, that'd be Richland County.
And it'd be a different county.
Well, my point is that she does have the authority, I believe.
I think she has to follow the order, so I think she has a little bit of interpretation on certain things, but I think when it's spelled out that cut and dry, 10 people, I don't think she can.
Well, apparently there's other directors in other counties that see it a different way.
I will look into that, but like I
And
said.
I wonder if the governor made a special exception for the Muirfield tournament.
Well, and therein lies the problem with all of
There's money
this.
with that.
You know, rules and regulations, it's a equal protection question with me. Because if it's statewide, that's fine. But you let one school district do it, or you let one event happen, and you've opened up the door. I'm one member on this board, but I would be very comfortable with going for a mandamus action on the health department. Mandamus is if you have a government entity that's not doing what they are obligated to do, if she's fine with everything but that mass gathering. But like I say, Muirfield's in Delaware County. So how, to the class of 2020, how do you tell those graduates that it's okay to have 9,000 spectators on the 19th of July, okay, in the same county that we can't have our graduation?
You are preaching to the choir.
I'm
and
telling you.
I don't know
I'm
what.
comfortable with a mandamus action.
I don't think it's her fault. I don't know what, and I will do some research because I don't know what Muirfield classifies under, but what she told us is that, and again, they're getting their direction from the state health orders, that if there's a specific set of regulations for something like a baseball game, because believe me, I'm at my kids' baseball games and you've got 24 kids just between the teams and all the parents, and for the most part, it looks pretty normal. But because there's a specific set of regulations or guidelines for that, they have their own numbers. Anything that doesn't is 10. I will do a little more homework and see if I can learn more as to how things like Muirfield can happen. I don't know.
Or maybe we can find a couple couples interested in getting married in the Big Walnut area late in July.
And hand out diplomas at the reception.
Graduation.
Do a reception.
Certainly, there's like a way we can combine that into a reality show and turn it into a revenue generator.
I'm sure it might be fun. And then, unless there's any other questions on that, just real quick, and Angie at the beginning mentioned prom as well. Just to clear up some things with that, we originally had the venue of Ville Milano, which we've had probably even when I think when you were principal, but I know for a long time we've had it. Huh?
The old days?
Just a few years ago. But they are not taking any other banquets, receptions, or anything until August. And then they also told us, we checked with them today, because somebody questioned that, so I just wanted to double check. They had 13 events booked. They only have 3 left because everybody is canceled. So they're trying to decide if they're going to still continue to be open in August. And I have a cousin that's getting married, and they just lost all their money because the place that was going to do the reception went under. And they're saying that they're not, that was in the news about a week ago, that they're not paying anyone back. So note, with all the rules that they have, and then the dancing's a whole nother piece. You can't do buffets. I talked to the owner of Serve about maybe getting creative with him. He's like, I have to use paper plates, and who wants to eat a steak on a paper plate? And he went on a whole tangent on how he was frustrated. So there's just no other venue that we could find that could handle our size and then would be willing to do the dance. So then our prom committee, whose 18 students have planned the entire year, have planned prom. They set forth a hashtag Starry Night that they're going to ask for people to then, because senior class officers came to me and they were like, Mr. Jadis, we just want to dress up go to dinner and get our picture taken. And so that was kind of the idea, and then the prom committee ran with that, so we've put that information out, that right now is what we have planned for July 17th. They're calling it kind of an Insta prom, but that came from our prom committee.
And I would just add in, thank you to Mark for looking up and finding out that apparently the tournament, according to Governor DeWine, the tournaments have been activation plan for safe practices, which has been approved. So I will definitely ask our health commissioner why they're able to do that, but we can't have graduation.
Well, I mean, if they're comfortable with the plan that's been set out.
And I don't know if they are the approving agent of that, or if DeWine got involved because there's lots of revenue at stake. I'm not sure, but I certainly will see what we can find out.
At what point do we decide this is how we're doing graduation? Is there kind of a drop dead date that you're gonna give families so they know kind of when are you making that final decision?
I mean, I really feel that we're hopeful that we're gonna, the order, my understanding is, runs out June 30th.
Yeah.
So we feel that by June 30th or before, we'll know. I think that if we go past that, then we would have to make a decision.
Yeah.
He has to, if not, I mean, he has to at least do something with the order, because if he doesn't, then the order is no longer in effect, and then we can go ahead and have it. So that would be our time, which would be, next week? So,
Well, to that, I
Tuesday.
guess to that question, if we can't do what we'd like to do, we would still probably just do whatever we can do that day, correct? Whether
correct, we would
it's-
keep it that day. We would look to, and we've kind of set this up already a little bit, just to fiddle with if we had to, but we would have to do some version of a, either a drive up or an appointment type thing. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could do it. We'd make it as special as we possibly could, but we'd have some way where students, we'd probably take the whole day, and throughout the day, they would come up and get their diploma and keep the social distancing, and we would figure a way. We've already talked to HR Imaging that would take the, photographs. There's different things you can do. Sometimes what they've done is you take a picture with the student alone with the diploma, and then they might be able to walk by and you get a picture with their family together, because with the family, they could all be together in a picture. So we would do something to try to make it special, and
then
we
they
would
put
just
into a
take that whole
video,
day.
Right? with
Yeah,
the
and
speeches.
we'd have to look at that. There's a cost to that, but we'd be able to divert some of the funds that we were going to use for, police and chair rental. And that's the other thing that we've been working with, to make sure that, we don't have money out there that we can't get back and that type of thing. So right now, I'm going back to the question earlier about what our date is. We've checked on all those things, and right now, we're still good. So if we would go too far, then we would be in trouble, of losing those deposits. So we would need to keep that end of June deadline. But we would try to make it as special as we could in that kind of format. And what's nice is everybody's done it. So now I could go back to all those principles. What'd you like? What did you not like? What went well? What didn't go well? I mean, I've seen everything from principal cutouts with their arm like this, and the student comes in and they take the picture, and the other people had like the large pizza oven kind of, and they put the plum on that and handed it to the kids. So I mean, we'll come up with something to make it special, but obviously we want to make sure we do the in-person. But we'll probably take up that whole day, is what I think would happen.
I did want to take an opportunity just to say, it's been impressive, the efforts that you and the high school staff have taken in recognizing those students, and just to hear you talk right now about the military student, I for one think that's really quite above and beyond, and am very appreciative on behalf. I know that class kind of feels a little bit gypped, not a little bit, I mean, this is crazy, but those efforts have been really remarkable.
And our staff has really stepped up. I mean, I go back, I know we already talked about it, but on the day of the actual graduation, when, within less than 48 hours, every staff member picked a student to go to their house and drop it off on a Saturday. And we had the donation of the plane, which I think was a little unique, but still I think the kids really liked it, and the community that, really was supportive with the gift basket. So yeah, I think between our staff and community, everybody wants to do everything possible for them. So, for sure.
Well, good job.
Thank you.
I would make one suggestion, that you get her answer in writing when you ask her if there's any way,
Okay.
and why it can't be.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Janus?
Thanks for being flexible and continuing to trying to find a way.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, after our sanitizing, next up, We just wanted to share, and I had, originally when we did the agenda, I had hoped to have some news tonight to be able to share. We've been hearing for quite a while that today was the day that, that was day 10 from when he said within 10 days he would release it. We had heard kind of in our inner circles that it would be today, and then found out earlier today that now they're saying Tuesday he's going to release his document. Had a meeting with, and unfortunately Sheila, the health commissioner, was not able to be there because her grandchild was being born, but her assistant ran the meeting, and you know, I asked a few times, so you all had a call with the health department, because Sheila kind of indicated that in an email. Is the plan that we've come up with as a county, things we want to do, will this be permissible under what they're talking? Have to wait until Tuesday because he wasn't overly confident on that. So I wish I had more to report, but I don't have a lot since last week because, again, we kind of talked about our committee internally and what we've been working on. My hope is that this comes out Tuesday. We were very adamant with the health department that as soon as we know what's permissible from the state, we have to move quickly on making some decisions at a local level, both with the county oversight from the health department and obviously in our district, because like I said, we've got multiple layers of things that we have in the works, but you know, they're kind of talking about, well, this fall when the kids come back. I go, I keep hearing this fall, and I just want to point out that's mid-August that we have kids back in buildings. So I think typically when you think about fall, you think leaves are falling, and we're talking really very soon. And so we have a lot of logistics that we have to work through that we're just kind of on hold. So I think all the superintendents made that point pretty strongly, and hopefully once we hear something Tuesday, we can kind of move forward with what the health department here interprets that to be for us, and then bring that back to our committee and try to get to a point then where we can put out some options. I did want to clarify, you know, you try to communicate, and of course sometimes it doesn't come off how you want it to. So just to clarify, because some people heard us say we are looking at offering remote learning for those who want it. And I think some people heard that from when I announced it on an auto call and took it as everybody's going to have remote learning, or you're voting, and if the most votes are remote learning, everybody has to do that. That is not our intention. That's not been the committee's feedback, but we do feel, and I can tell you every superintendent I've talked to is planning to offer remote learning in some capacity for those families who are not comfortable coming back. So we have to wait and see what our numbers are to have that fully executed in terms of staffing and exactly what that looks like, but Jen's been working with our teachers on improving remote learning if it's a longer term thing. But we are planning on having options, returning in whatever capacity we're able to. Certainly, I would like to have everybody back every day if we're allowed to do that. Gotten a lot of feedback to that point, but that's the next survey that will come out once we know what the legal options are. We've been able to narrow some options down with input from our committee, and we'll be putting that out just as soon as we can, but I can't see any point in putting that out to parents until we have this final guidance document from the state and we know if these are requirements or recommendations. Any questions on that?
I've seen this week, I think Lebanon City Schools and Mason, that they've put out this well-formed plan. I mean, are they going to be in a boat that, I guess then I wonder, why aren't we proceeding? I mean, is it going to be potentially that if they're not following that guidance, they're going to have to pull back on all those things? Or is it based on counties are making different decisions? Or
well, it's based on, it's interesting because it's based on, is it going to be requirements or recommendations from the state? So if it's recommendations, they can pretty much do whatever they want as long as their local health department's on board. Our local health department shared a document that's floating around, and I think you said you'd seen it from Warren County. And so we had said we liked some of the things in there, and we've said, so this is something that you can support. Got a yes, so as long as there's nothing in that. So we have a shell of all these things like, hey, in Delaware County, we're going to be able to do this with busing, and because if we can only bus 20 kids at a time, as I mentioned before, that's kind of a non-starter for us, really. So it sounds like unless the state comes out and says, because I've read a transportation draft document, if that's a requirement, then what we want to do is going to be really hard to do. but if it's a recommendation, so they're moving forward like they're going to be recommendations. We've made some of those plans in the background. We're ready to go as soon, but I just personally would feel more comfortable waiting until we are sure they're going to be recommendations before we announce this big plan to all of our families, and then we have to pull it back. That's just me personally, and maybe I'm not being aggressive enough, but I think it's like once you've announced something and then you have to pull it back, people get really confused, and I would just like to avoid that.
Well, I agree with that process. I just didn't know whether there was something else going on in some of those other counties that, because I know that you see that people said, well, the governor says the schools can decide when they go back in the fall. And so everybody thinks that we're all making those decisions, and it's like, no, we've always set our calendars. It's
the how.
how do we go back?
So hopefully we'll have an announcement to go out to families next week with what we are permitted to do, and then I'd like to schedule, I'm kind of just waiting until we have it, we'll schedule one more committee meeting to kind of look through and finalize those options before we send a survey out. I know some of the districts have been, even to the level, we're kind of sharing survey questions with each other, but even surveying on masks, like families' preferences on a bus, in common spaces, in a classroom, on staff. As of right now, it's looking like it may be optional for kids, but mandatory for staff because they are employees, and it's still mandatory for all employees in the state. So those are some of the things that we'll obviously have to work through, but a lot of the districts are starting to really kind of get parent feedback on, you know, how do you feel about it in these different, obviously, whatever plan we come up with, if somebody wants to wear a mask, they can, but how do you feel about other people not wearing them in these settings? So that'll probably be part of what we ask, just so we can kind of narrow down exactly how we want to move forward with that. Hopefully next week we'll know more. Sorry, I was really excited. I really thought I'd have something to share tonight, more than what I said last week. Any other questions? All right, with that, I think we have a sanitized podium. We have Mrs. Young here with our academic update.
Good evening. So kind of to Angie's point, we've been doing a lot of work. Apologies, not used to a microphone. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, planning. We're ready to go. You know, getting questions even in the community, like we've heard nothing. Is that we're ready? We're just waiting on that. So we're ready with those plans. So since I'm not going to be talking about that plan tonight, we're going to talk about the 2020 vision just a little bit. So when we started the 2020 vision in 2015, we talked a lot about May, summer of 2020. What does that look like? How are we going to kind of like put a bow on the 2020 vision? How do we then transition into the 2021 school year? Certainly in none of our planning did it look like this. This is in no way of any of how we had planned the 2020 vision to kind of come to the end of the 2020 year. But with that, as I think about that, a big piece of the 2020 vision, really the whole premise, is reimagining education. And albeit not how we wanted to reimagine, it certainly has forced us to do that over the last few months in a unique way. So there can certainly be some positives there. You have in front of you logos. You'll notice at the top is our 2020 vision logo. I'm positive that you've seen that. The logo below that is our new academic vision logo. You'll notice they're almost identical. And that's intentionally so. In talking about how we're going to transition from a vision, the 2020 vision, to making it our culture, we really want to make sure that it's now an expectation, but it's not going away. It's not the new flavor of the month come August again and we start something new, that it's really just going to become an expectation. So we wanted that logo to really look very similar. So it will be our academic vision, and now being an expectation, even to the point where it will be in our staff handbook, that our staff receives in August, that it is an expectation that we're personalizing, engaging, and growing students. In addition to that, our Academic Advisory Council, and thanks to two board members who are on that committee, the committee again is about 15 community members, 15 staff members, and they worked throughout the 2019-20 school year to create our version of the Portrait of a Graduate, which we are calling the Big Walnut Eagle Profile. So that is a depiction of the skills that our community feels that our graduates should have upon graduating from Big Walnut, and where they landed. And if you remember, we not only had the group working on it, but we did a community survey as well. with adaptable learner, a collaborator, a communicator, a problem solver, and a responsible citizen. And really, the Big Walnut Eagle profile will portray what we feel is the outcome of the 2020 vision, of the work that teachers have put in personalizing, engaging, and growing our students to create that outcome. So our focus has shifted a bit over this summer with really we're focused on pandemic learning and what does this look like going into next year, but still intend to unveil and roll out the Big Walnut Eagle profile that committee worked on in August, along with a video. You know, we traditionally have a 2020 video. We are going to be producing a video that talks about the movement from the 2020 vision into the Big Walnut Eagle profile and what that looks like. So stay tuned. That will be coming out in August, both of those things, as well as kind of unveiling this academic vision logo in hopefully similar formats as we've done in the past, like convocation, curriculum nights. Hopefully they look somewhat similar to what we've done in the past, and we're able to do that. Questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right, next up we will have Mr. Swartz, who will be sharing a construction update with you this evening. And I know he has put a couple of handouts there at your seat as well, which you may want to reference as he presents. And we'll get your podium wiped off for you here, Doug, and be right with you. Yes, their microphone's picking up for the streaming, so even though you can't really hear it.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, board members. Okay, so real quick, we're going to walk through the three forms you usually see every month. It's a construction update, so you received it in an email yesterday, but for the first time in, 12 weeks, made your hard copies. So back to some sense of normalcy here. So I'm going to start with the typical, the pictured one, the actual report itself. And as I always do, I took the liberty to highlight a few things in yellow. Again, that's all important information, but just to hit a few things that I thought were of interest. So I'll grab them here real quick for the public. Site work and site utilities. This is a good thing. The gas meter is set. We now have gas to the building. So we're really at that final stage with a lot of things. So that just occurred. It says coming in June, but actually just occurred earlier this week. The elementary and central energy plant, which has everyone's attention as we race to get done and start school August 19th, or be ready for school August 19th. That's what I have to be concerned about. I highlighted a couple things at the bottom there. Again, things are starting to come live or start up. So the central energy plant, that's what CEP is. The cooling tower, so basically the ability to make air condition. And the boilers, basically the ability to heat the building. Both of those units, or multiple units actually, have started up and gone through preliminary testing. And we're well on our way to have those systems fully operational when students arrive. High school, just to share, I know some of you had a tour of it, so you were aware there under what happened in May. There were some walls up. Some of us stood inside the new competition gym, so you saw the walls were up. You saw the start of the running track. You saw the roof, if you will. The physical roof isn't on, but the structure's up. That's that other line item there. And then what's coming in June, which I think is exciting, is the high school is going to start to get exterior walls. So when we were there, it was just slabs floating in space, some steel columns. Now we're going to finally start enclosing that. In our reveal, the schedule shows we're going to start doing roof on one of the first classroom wings the end of August or September. So we're racing to get part or portions of that enclosed. We have solid things to do through the winter. I do want to then address Prairie Run Elementary. The schedule still shows us, it keeps bouncing around between July 27th, which is a Monday, July 29th, which is a Wednesday. At one point, it was at the 30th. Sorry about that. So I just want to share. Well, the schedule still shows that, but I just want to give you a heads up and always keep you informed and be open in our communication. I spent several hours today with Gilbane, with the architect, walked the site again. We talked about all and any challenges we may have. They at this time are not submitting a request to change the date, but I believe there's potential there that some items could slip by it. Some items include, for instance, paving. They did start paving today. There's a positive. So North Miller Drive has about a third of it all the way up heading north. the base coat as it's called. But paving is going to take 25 working days to finish, including Saturdays. We should make it to the 27th. But if we get some bad rain days, or they have some issues with a batch plant or something to go in the weeds, that portion of work may slide a little bit. We have to have enough done to get occupancy. So that's just one item I'm pointing out. Casework had some COVID-19 issues. It was manufactured in Michigan, you might recall. Casework has started showing up, not at the level they anticipated. Actually showed up yesterday for the first time. Casework, just to remind you, though, has a ripple effect. There's sinks that go in casework, things like that. So even if you say, I don't need storage, we still need some of those items, especially in order to get temporary occupancy. So there's a ripple effect. So even though casework ultimately will be done, there may be some plumbing issues that are struggling potentially to get done by the week of the 27th. So all I'm doing is just kind of laying out there if there's the potential. They have not formally asked. We walked through. They talked about several items. I've asked them to please go back diligently and review their schedule, look at contractors, look at their use of contingency, look at weekends, including Saturday and even Sunday, especially for paving and some other things, and do everything they can to professionally expedite the work. I will share, though, it's just like anything. There's only so much room in the end, so when you get down to the end, even though you say throw everything at it but the kitchen sink, there's a magical number and rationale to how many people can work in each room successfully and efficiently. Eventually you lose efficiencies. So again, I'm not saying it's moving. I'm simply saying there's a lot of stuff to do between now and that week, and we've got a plan to get there, but I've also asked them to look at their schedule, to look at their manpower, and make adjustments as needed and inform us if and when necessary, sooner than later. They're working with the fire department. They're working with all the boxes are being checked. I'm pleased with everything that's happening. I'm just raising that flag, just so there's expectations. And when we move in, this may be more for the public, it's an aggressive schedule. Again, we'll continue to work on landscaping. They'll still be painting probably as teachers are moving in. There's still a lot of fine details. I was explaining to Jen Young outside before the meeting. I said, oh, I know we'll get a 99%. I'm not worried about that. It's that last 1% is usually the challenge. And that's what we'll be working on from the end of July prior to the start of school. And so we'll be in there with them. They're aware. It's more than doable. I'm not worried about that. Ron and McClure and I've already talked about moves, et cetera. We have action plans in place. But again, just wanted the board to understand in case I should come back to you and say, we're going to formally request, or they're going to request to extend their schedule. You're not surprised, so to speak. But we'll make sure it's within line and still getting us in the building. So again, I have every confidence we'll make it, but I just wanted to share that there's a chance there could be some slippage. Even without slippage, there'll still be some challenges even after we start moving in. But we will have a safe, complete building when we start. So that was a lot of verbiage to say we're on schedule, but there's a lot between now and then, and I just wanted to empower you that there's always that chance, so to speak. So I'm going to stop there because that was a lot of words and see if anyone has any questions.
What asphalt plant are they using for the asphalt?
They're using Ostrander. They tried to use the Westerville one, and that's been committed, from what I'm being told, to some project the city of Columbus has. They're trying to go, even I believe Kokosing has a plant. They're trying to go to a fourth plant. So the difficulty is not manpower. That's the first question I asked. Do they need to supplement or add other teams? The difficulty is getting material at this point. The weather has backed everybody up, and they're having a challenge. So they've locked in the plant they're using, but it's not enough material, so to speak, to do enough, if you will, in a day, or to get beyond this 25, 30-day schedule that they shared today. Today they did more than they thought, so maybe they'll better it. But again, it was a beautiful day, no weather, and they've had a lot of extra time to prep the base. So,
And
go ahead.
Another question is, are they going to put the gate back in at the end of Miller?
We are not. There's no gate there permanent. They are putting like a concrete barrier, if you will. These two small barriers are put down each day. But yes, I know where you're going with that, that we are open. We are no longer gated. The building is secure. But yes, someone can go around the barrier, I guess. It's self-evident if they go to the end of the street.
And the third question, the lighting, the bases are in.
The bases are in, about a third of the poles are in. They held off on some of the larger parking lots, but actually the lights are around the high school, ironically, where there's less traffic, if you will. They're holding off on putting them around the elementary till the asphalt's in, so they don't accidentally have anything damage them, so to speak. But the lights are on site.
Design concept is what I was going to.
Okay.
Or they're the same as the street lights?
No, they are not. They're more of a modern LED light that's on our site.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have one question, and I appreciate how well you bird-dogged all this. To be honest with you, when Mrs. Dorsch and I had the chance to be on the tour with
Correct.
you, it was certainly reassuring to see all of the work that was being done and kind of exciting. But if it's the 27th or the 29th, that's, and we've always known that it's a tight window
Correct.
to get teachers in. I can imagine in a normal year, elementary teachers are probably working in their classrooms on and off throughout the summer.
Correct.
Recognize that this isn't the normal year. Is the move-in plan, are teachers kind of bringing their own things into that space?
The only, so they're bringing personal items. I would say 99% of the furniture is new. They're not bringing computers, they're not bringing projectors, phones, et cetera. What they've done, I toured Harrison Street the other day, they have anywhere from 10 to 15 boxes. That's what's being moved. They were requested to move breakable personal items, take them home. So nothing happens with the movers, so there'll probably be another box or so per teacher. But activity rugs, any of that stuff is new. So they have very limited amount. I don't want to say it's nothing, but it's not nearly based on what's in the classroom. The bulk of the heavy lifting is already done by the contractors. But they do have to unpack and obviously decorate their rooms, et cetera.
And is that, so that's our big Walnut folks doing those 10 boxes maybe per, or something?
Yes, we're self-performing the move. Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Excited to hear we'll be ready for the fall.
Me too. So the other two forms, I'm just going to highlight one item on each. Again, feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to start with the Gilbane construction contingency log. The only thing I wanted to point out there is where they stand on their percentage used. They're at 47%. This is potential and approved. So they're in very good shape. They still have another package left, as you might recall, the site athletics, and also the furniture package for the high school, and those combined have about $100,000 currently that would be assigned to them as part of their contingency. That's something we can discuss at the time of that award. So their contingency would go up, if you will. And then our contingency, the thing I wanted to point out, I guess since I did the percentage, I'll go there first. Ours is at 29%. That's unallocated or unforecasted as being allocated. We've talked before, again, that's an aggressive number, if you will, but it's important to note as you go through that form, we've had a lot of change orders that have been assigned to the high school as challenges or issues or amendments or corrections, whether code-driven, owner-driven, architect-driven, contractor-driven. On the elementary, we've immediately applied it as a predecessor to the high school. So the high school, to be blunt, we've already done a lot of change orders for. Its challenge, though, is still getting, obviously, as I said earlier, enclosed with that coming here in the near future. And then site athletics is obviously the biggest variable still in terms of risk, not coming out of the ground yet. So I'll stop there on the money reports and see if there's any questions. Okay. And site athletics, I wanted to share as it forecasts currently. We had a long meeting on that also. We've had some challenges between the estimate and the budget on that. We believe we'll be at a point the week of, let's see what that'd be, the week of the 6th to have a facilities meeting. And then at this time, I don't know if Angie had talked about it, we would then go to the board meeting as already established on the 23rd of July for the first reading. Again, this is site athletics, and then go to the first board meeting in August to award it. Just so it gives us a little more time. Like I said, we spent about 3 hours doing that as well, trying to look at ways to cut costs, not cut quality, not cut scope. We're down to about $500,000 we're still playing with, so to speak. So we need a couple more days, a couple more numbers to come in from some other bidders that Gilbane is tracking. And then we'll be at a point we can have a meeting with, again, the board's facilities committee, get their buy-in or not buy-in on some of the alternates we're looking at to reduce cost. And then from there, hopefully go to the board on the 23rd for that initial reading. So with that, I think that ends my report in terms of the new builds. Any questions on that? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate all your work. I know you're in crazy crunch time right now to get the elementary open, and just really appreciate all your attention to detail there.
It's a fun time.
All right, with that, I believe that is all I have, unless anyone has anything for me. I will just add, Mark's great at researching things over there for me, but apparently the majority of Muirfield is in Franklin County, so they're the ones that approved the plan. But we will look into it. I just want to let you know that. I would have guessed Delaware
It's
as
still in
well.
the state of Ohio, so.
I know, I'm just saying it wasn't our health commissioner, so just wanted to share that he found, but we certainly will look into it more. That's all I have.
Kind of like the zoo, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, item number 7 is recognitions, and unfortunately, we can't have our young scientists here tonight, but I would like to go ahead and read off some recognitions. I know that our office is sending out some certificates of achievement related to this, and so for our ward members, please be on the lookout for those. And I'd like to apologize in advance. Normally, when you're all here, I can come up and say, hey, let me just make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So if I am about to butcher your name, I'd like to apologize in advance. So starting at our middle school, Addie Butler received a superior ranking, and Addie was recognized and received a 4-year State Science Day Participation Award. Congratulations, Addie. Connor Wolf also received a superior, and he was a 7th grader at the middle school at that time. Congratulations to Connor. At the intermediate, Will Freder received a superior as a 6th grader. That was also the 3rd place Excellent Award for Civil Engineering with $100 and a plaque sponsored by the American Association of Civil Engineers. Sahana Kata, superior 6th grade. This is Sahana's 2nd trip to the SSD. She received a $1,000 scholarship sponsored by the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority. Suha Kata, superior 5th grade, and received the Dr. Lynn E. Elfner Young Scientist Award, $100 sponsored by the Ohio Academy of Science. Grayson Alexander, 6th grade, received an excellent, along with Ali Delvesco, who received an excellent as a 6th grader as well, and Kylie Cochran received an excellent as a 5th grader as well. So congratulations to all of you, and we'd like to applaud your efforts and representing the district so well with your efforts at the various science fairs. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
And I would just note, I've gotten some texted feedback that when you're talking, if you could just kind of grab your microphone. They said they can hear me really well because I'm holding mine close. So if you don't mind, just getting a little bit closer when you're talking so it can pick you up.
It's time for the treasurer's report.
Wow, that's quite an intro. I feel like I need some kind of music after that introduction. I shared a good amount of May's financial report last week at our meeting, but just to recap that our revenues were pretty close on track, and expenditures we have continued to be under, which is a good thing. I did note last week that we had seen in our state revenue some shortfalls, which we had known about, and I'll provide a little more context to that then as I go into, we'll call it educated guessing, speculation on how we will end the year. At this point in time, we have, as we prepare for our final appropriations and closing out the year, it's not uncommon to be getting many of those things that even our pays that aren't actually paid until June 30th, but need to get them processed and those sorts of things. So we have, I would say, posted and completed probably about 99% of everything. So I feel pretty good with the numbers that we're looking at as of June. You'll notice, we'll talk about in appropriations where it is higher than what we're seeing for our final expenses. Again, we try to make sure that there is still the appropriated amounts, that if something were to just come up at the end of the year, we still have that appropriated. But happy to be able to share that with House Bill 164 that passed and was signed last Friday, it's been a real roller coaster when it comes to the spring and revenues and everything, but very happy that we were able to get $375,000 coming back to our district from the about 900 and just shy of $1 million that was reduced from us in May. Bottom line, though, we are looking about 600,000 under in state revenue, but that was made up by various other items. So revenue, we are seeing a potential shortfall of about 280,000 for the year. Looking at, we should be just a little over 43.5 million in total revenues. And the part that was shocking then on the expenditure side, some of the items, we've been tracking definitely lower on both salaries and our benefits. What really has kind of helped bridge the gap a little bit is some of us being remote learning and some of the savings that we have seen from different things such as fuel or some of our extra time and overtime not being in our buildings. We did save on some substitute costs, substitute teaching costs, and then a lot of just those little things of even though when staff were coming in, keeping things well cleaned and within guidance for COVID-19, still there wasn't the need to every single day be cleaning up messes and things like that. So we did see some savings in other various supplies, both classroom and operational. So at what we would appear, even with the transfer, which we'll talk about a little later also, needing to make a transfer to our food service fund, we are right around 43.1 million, just a little under that. So anticipating we will end the year in the black by about 400,000. So that is good. There could be still some last minute bills that come in that we may still need to pay. But like I said, I'd say 99% of what we do is done and is posted and on our books. So happy to, it's been a up and down with what we've been seeing, but happy to be able to say that we're pretty assured that we should again end this year in the positive. Other questions on kind of the numbers? Wanted to share one other thing. Just I get interesting things that come across my desk, and I like to pass that on. And so this came from a Baker Tilly, our municipal advisor, and they were sharing just in one of their updates Ohio spending in 2020, and not surprisingly that we are continuing as of June 10th is what this goes to. Not surprising, we're seeing that spending throughout Ohio is definitely down compared to spending levels of January. But it's encouraging to see that as of that day also that general retail and apparel as well as grocery not surprising, but the general retail and apparel is basically they're showing is at the levels that it was in January. So we think about also that that was one of the things that was opened sooner than some of the other items. Two of the other areas that they're tracking is hotel and restaurants and art, entertainment, and recreation. If we think about that, those have not been open very long. And it's not shocking that those are still significantly down, but starting to, as of, again, June 6th, starting to see those start to creep up. So still down, everything is down and not surprising, but it's encouraging when you see those getting back to a normal level and creeping up. And that is what I had for today.
I guess just piggybacking off of your report, sorry, let me grab it.
She said it made a big difference when you introduced Jeremy and seriously held it up. So.
Okay, I'll try to keep my goatee off of the spit guard or whatever that's called.
Your private microphone.
Excellent. I'm going to do something that I'm pretty sure I've never done in my time on the board, which is thank the legislature of the state of Ohio for taking a second look at some of those cuts and making some adjustments to make those cuts a little bit more equitable. And while I don't think anybody's super excited about receiving a cut, appreciating the moments that we're in, that was an action that didn't necessarily have to take hold, that did, and I appreciate their efforts. Thank you, Jeremy. Item 9, select board policy. Seeing as we have nothing there, I will move ahead to board member items of interest, and Sherry, we'll start with you.
The only item I have is, this is just kind of a quick follow-up on, Angie mentioned this at our last board meeting, but about the band uniforms. Mr. Porter announced on the Facebook page, or let parents of the band members know over the weekend, that a lot of the schools in Ohio have felt for us, and some schools stepped forward to offer the use of pants and different uniform jackets and things. So it sounds like we will have, some uniforms to be able to compete in potentially this fall. So thanks to all of those who reached out in support of our band.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Doug, anything from you? Grab it.
The only thing I've got isn't necessarily as a board member, but as a grandparent of 2 students graduating in the class of 2020. And to all the students in that class, I would say congratulations. I was to be a presenter to one of my grandchildren. That's been eliminated. So I'll just take this opportunity to tell both of my grandkids that I'm very proud of them. That's all I got.
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you, Doug. Steve.
It's nice to see everybody, not on a screen. I think something might have gotten lost last week, and I just want to express my appreciation to the superintendent and treasurer for their leadership and foresight. They essentially volunteered and requested that we vote on a pay freeze for them. Recognize that with board operations and logistics, that might have gotten a little bit lost. In these extraordinary times, I wanted to make sure I publicly state that I appreciate their actions. These actions are not trivial, nor are they lost on me as a board member, and I appreciate that. Second, the OSBA, I know Sherry and Leanna have both been attending some of those virtual town halls as well. I sent an article to everybody relative to grades and grading policies during a remote learning opportunity, so in the hopes that would help if anybody was getting any questions, but wanted to share relative to our treasurer's report. Tomorrow there's also a free webinar co-hosted by OSBA, BASA, and OASBO that aims to provide additional insights. It's a free webinar. It's at 10:30 tomorrow morning, and it might allow us to understand more deeply all of the things that are kind of embedded in House Bill 164, because I think it's kind of complex. And then finally, Mr. President, to you I wanted to say thanks. I appreciate the remarks that you were prepping for the Eagle Examiner, and you specifically have a call to action discussing our need to demonstrate empathy and truly listen to one another in this unique time. So I wanted to say thank you to you as well.
Thank you. Leanna.
I don't know, Angie didn't bring this up this evening, and I know it's pretty small in the scheme of financial things, but one thing that we received in our board update that I wasn't surprised, because I know that this administration always looks for opportunities to save money, and was when Ron McClure indicated that we were in need of some equipment for our special education rooms at GRE, and the fact that Doug worked with Gilbane to find a school that was getting rid of theirs, and apparently they weren't okay for that school to use, but they're still in good condition.
They're tearing that school down and building a new one. It's actually Upper Arlington.
And
So, yeah.
just the fact that everybody here kind of worked together to save almost $15,000 for something that otherwise apparently would have gone to wherever, and we wouldn't have had access to it. So I think just another example of how our administrators are always working to make the most of our community's tax dollars, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate you bringing that up because I did not think to mention that tonight, but certainly appreciate Ron, Doug, and Laura and all their team working on that. But also want to, since you did bring it up, I want to thank Upper Arlington for letting us have it because that was really generous of them to let us come and get it.
All right. The only other thing that I would just like to add in terms of my comments are, I know in my day job how impossible it is for a lot of the businesses that I work with to try to figure out how to open, how to make your next steps, how to do what you need to do to serve your customers. And they don't have a tenth of the challenges in terms of legal requirements, hoops, and process and procedure and everything that's required to operate as a state entity. And so I just wanted to take a moment and thank our administration and all the appropriate staff that are all working to try to figure out how to do something in probably the most grayest of gray worlds that at least I've experienced in my lifetime. And I think one of the things I've grown to appreciate about getting to know educators better is that they're very much creatures of habit and creatures of plan and creatures of structure. And so I can only imagine how unnerving it can be at times to not know what the target is, what's required, and things of that nature. And so while it's not just a huge work effort, it's also requiring change and adaptation and adjustment to kind of how people are usually comfortable operating. And I just wanted to say, for one, I see those things happening, and I appreciate those efforts that I'm observing.
Thank you.
Item 11 is public participation. It's a meeting for the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting school district's business and is not considered a public community meeting. This is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please reference criteria for public participation, which is attached to the agenda. In our modified COVID times, I know we typically would have folks in attendance, and I know our policy's basically been asking people to submit comments. I don't know if you've all received anything for mention this evening to read into the record. Okay. Thank you very much. That'll bring us to item 12.1. It's recommended the board approve the final final amended appropriations for the fiscal year 20 to be submitted to the county auditor's office. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Leanna. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sherry. And Jeremy, I suppose you'd like to talk about this one a little bit.
So we, every year, you have to submit a temporary, which we'll be talking about for next year. And then we've made a couple amendments throughout the year, but at the end of the year, we look at then bringing those down to more the actual expenses and encumbered area. So what you have before you is that. We reduced from our March of 2020 amendment, we are reducing down approximately $6.4 million, much of that coming in the building fund area, which you'll notice that there's a appropriation for next year that much of that is going towards, the reduction is going towards the appropriation that we would be planning for next year. And then the other big area is also our permanent improvement fund, reducing that down. And again, those will be reallocated to next year for projects and various things that we'd be looking for on our permanent improvement side. Any questions, I guess, on any of those areas?
Seeing there's no questions, I think you can call the vote.
All right. Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorish,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 12.2, it's recommended the board to approve the fiscal year 21 temporary appropriations to be filed with the county auditor's office. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Leanna. And I don't know if you have anything else to add. I think you kind of started to talk a little about this one with the other
Yep.
one, but
Yeah, really, most of these areas are, a lot of them are grant funds that you'll see in, if you're looking at a fund list, 4s and 500s. So those are really very set for us based on allocations. You'll notice in there, one of them is the CARES money, so we'll be appropriating that and planning for that to hopefully help with some of the added costs to potentially opening up in person. And then all the other areas I think are pretty self-explanatory, but open to questions if you have any.
Under the general fund,
Mm-hmm.
I see the appropriations are 46 million,
Yes.
and I went back and looked at the 5-year forecast, and the anticipated revenue was 43, and that's before COVID.
Yes.
Where's the 3.1 million going to come from?
Now, this is something that we've talked about ongoing, that, and just to kind of look at where we've been in the past, we have continued to see that a shortfall in our planned revenue and expenses has been coming. It's been something that has been shown for probably the last 5 years, coming in these next couple years. And at this point in time, as I think, again, we as a group have talked about many of the cost-saving measures, the things that we have done to try to curb costs, but at this point in time, with what we're seeing in those revenue shortfalls from COVID-19 and other things, it's too early to tell what those revenues are. There's a lot of unknowns. But at this point in time, it would be coming from what I'm going to call our rainy day fund, which is our cash balance.
okay.
Other questions?
Jeremy, the 467, the Student Wellness and Success Fund, is that still the extra funding that we've received?
It is. Everything that
We
I've...
don't know where this next year, we know we have it. but
Correct.
after that,
Correct. So there was a slight increase up in the second year. Again, everything I've heard from the state, the cuts that have been given are to basic foundation. Extra add-on items have not been cut, including our, at least, again, anything could change, but our growth supplement as well. As a growing school district, that I've been told, as much as we know, that will continue. So yes, these are those student wellness and success dollars that we've been paying for additional mental health supports and nursing supports.
I guess along the lines, this is probably more of a financial report question, but it just kind of hit me as Leanna said that. So what kind of guidance are you getting right now from the state in terms of at least a date to decide what they're going to do, let alone how much?
It is a plea from all of us in central Ohio and around, and that they tell us sooner than later. If there's going to be a cut, just let us know. Unfortunately, we still not necessarily any guidance on what it could look like, if there will be. So again, we just continue to plan on what we know, and we know that the governor has asked his own individual areas to look at reserving 20%, and I've continued to carry that 20%.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then I think you can call the vote.
Okay. Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Crowell?
No.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
And Mr. Schneider?
Yes. Item 12.3, it's recommended the board authorize the agreement with the Ohio School Plan for the district liability insurance coverage effective July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021 in the amount of $117,216. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Leanna. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, so this is really pretty cut and dry. This is for all of our property, casualty, auto, all of those policies that we need to run a district and make sure that we are protected. We did see a little bit of an increase, but as we are, encompasses a growing auto fleet, pardon me, growing staff, students, all of those pieces go into the underwriting. So not surprising that we would see a little bit of an increase on top of what I'm told is about a 2.5% to 3% overall book of business that is being seen in the insurance world. This is through the Ohio School Plan and continues to be a good plan for us to go through. It does provide kind of additional benefits that some plans may not, such as a dividend that we did receive in the fall, and it was several $1,000s of getting back, which you don't always see that from other insurance plans.
Any questions for Jeremy? When you're ready.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
and Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 12.4, it's recommended the board approve the HVAC full-service contract for all board-owned facilities, with the exception of the new high school, Prairie Run Elementary School, and the new central energy plant. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. And looks like Doug's back to the sterilized podium for another round.
And the microphone. Yes, good evening. So this is a contract award that's based on, it was requested just to go back in time. This body had requested that this particular scope of work, that when we came to fiscal year 2021, that we go out in an RP format, and because the current contractor, as it stands now, has had this contract in some form for a little over 15 years. So felt it was more than worth our time to validate and really see what else is out there, validate their number, validate scope, look at expanding scope possibly, and that's what we did. We ended up getting 6 proposals just to share. We shortlisted that as a team internally down to 3, interviewed those 3 teams virtually, and came up with a final ranking, and I'll say it was pretty competitive in terms of number 1 and number 2. We are here today, though, to recommend Multiventures Limited. Multiventures is the current contract holder, and we're looking to stay with that contractor in question. I will share in terms of their cost. They increased their cost about 3% from where they were last year. That's very much on par where they were the previous year in terms of growth. In terms of the cost we did get from the 6 proposals, 3 of them were within like 2% of Multiventures. Multiventures was not the lowest, just to share. They were the second lowest. This was a qualifications-based program. But both their number, the number 2 as we scored, and a third party that did not make the final ranking, in the top 3, were all within about 2% of each other in terms of their price. Multiventures, to share, was ranked for the top not only for their legacy knowledge of the district. That was a huge card. The other competitors attempt to localize themselves. The others are from Cleveland and other Dublin, Columbus, places like that. But also just the value added that they add. They do a lot of things for us, whether it was during design. They gave a numerous number of hours to aid myself, just to be selfish in terms of looking at drawings, meeting with contractors, meeting with manufacturers. They work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, if you will, in terms of responding to principals and staff. So those are really the deciding factors that put them over the edge. We did expand the services. We've added things like Energy Star with the EPA, so now we're going to start to know over time, how do our buildings stack up with our peer districts around the country and the state for similar size, similar equipment. So how are we operating? Are we efficient? I'm really excited once we get to the new schools and doing that for those as well, but we're only doing it for the existing or legacy buildings, and I'm happy to answer any questions in terms of the process or who we're recommending.
Anything for Doug?
Okay.
Thank you to you, Mark, and Jeremy, who I know put a lot of time in. Ron as well, who's not here tonight, but also was a big part of that committee. Appreciate your time and effort on that.
The one question actually just popped in my head. So the exclusion of the new high school Prairie Run and the Central Energy Plant, is that more because they're not online today and that eventually they'll be added to an addendum
It's really
of some
three
kind?
things. Number one, the board does not own or operate them as July 1st, so we don't own them yet. Number two, they're going to be under warranty, specifically the Central Energy Plant and the elementary school, for a minimum of the first year, starting after around July 27th again. There's that date again. And more importantly, the high school is still under construction. And so because we have a campus setting in that Central Energy Plant, there's still going to be a lot of tweaking and hand cooks in the kitchen, if you will, to be short in terms of how to look at it, that are still messing and tying and adding what's called load to that Central Energy Plant. So there's still a lot of things that are going to affect the Central Energy Plant, which have a negative and positive effect on the elementary. We will have a few days it's hot and it shouldn't be, it's cold that it shouldn't be, because the high school is trying to come online over the next year and a half. So the thought is, at this time, we're seeking proposals from those contractors who already have warranty, so they're doing about a third of what's under the contract with Multiventures now. We're looking to add the service side, the planned or predicted service side, as well as respond to hot and cold calls, if you will. So that way they control it all. It's their issue. It's their equipment to maintain. This was done in concert with Multiventures. I also queried the other 5 that we're proposing, worked with the architect, the contractors. What do they think the best use of public dollars is? And overwhelming, everyone said the same thing, one cook in the kitchen. We will still have Multiventures as an oversight, if you will, but that's currently where we're headed. Keep those within the construction world, even though we're using the elementary and Central Energy Plant, until probably I'd recommend December of 21, when the high school's done and we've moved in. So a lot of verbiage just to say I still think it's there, so to speak, to take care of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd say if there's nothing else, then Jeremy, you're good to go.
Okay. Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Abstain.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
and Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 12.5, it's recommended the board approve the transfer of the following funds, $100,000 from the general fund to the food service fund. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Leanna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sherry. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I noted earlier this in kind of the update for June where I thought we would end. And just to reiterate, this, in trying to anticipate what we would look like in the end, this transfer was included, just so we would be able to get the full picture. And happy that we are still appearing to be positive to end the year. However, even the best food service department, when you go about 2 to 2.5 months without getting students in and buying lunches, it's going to take a hit. And that this is helping to cover the at least part of the shortfall. It did have a good balance to start the year, and it did eat up that balance. But this is to help to cover the remaining shortfall. Other questions?
I think we're good to go.
Okay. Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 12.6, it's recommended the board approve due to the present pandemic to waive grade point average requirements for athletic eligibility in the fall of 2020, outlined in Board Policy 2431, in an effort to align to the Ohio High School Athletic Association eligibility standards. If the effects of the pandemic continue through the 2021 school year and additional eligibility standards related to grade point averages are released by the OHSAA, the board will align to such standards given that do not require grade point averages higher than the minimum established in Board Policy 2431. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Leanna. And Mark, I see you're here.
Yeah, lots of verbiage there. Apologies for that, but we did want to make sure that it is very clear for our student athletes going into the fall season. The OHSAA has come out with standards to essentially ensure that all students are athletically eligible for the fall season. And we are just looking to recommend for your approval a resolution to essentially waive those grade point average requirements in our policy for this year if such pandemic effects essentially occur throughout the year and the OSHA releases extended standards. We're not looking for those to be above our grade point averages. We have those minimums established, but we just want to make sure it's very clear as to the effects that the student athletes will have and be eligible for this coming fall. Just a quick note, we did not look to change the policy just because, first of all, it's potentially, hopefully, just a one-year thing and possibly even just a one-season thing. But we did talk with OSBA about this, and they recommended that we just do a resolution for the recognition here.
So just to clarify, since it is a mouthful,
Yes.
on that second sentence, is that basically saying that, let's say hypothetically, fall's open, winter gets shut down, spring opens, we're going to comply basically with whatever the OHSAA regulation is? I just wanted to, that's what I
Correct.
think I'm
For-
reading,
for
but I wanted to make
eligibility,
sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it was, and that's with regard to grade point average.
Right.
Specifically.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for Mark on this one? Jeremy, when you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes. Item 12.7, it's recommended the board approve the following donations. $67,000 donated to Big Walnut local schools by the Sunbury Meadows Community Development Authority, earmarked for the Permanent Improvement Fund. $355 donated to the high school class of 21, donated by Kevin Oakes, and donated services provided in the estimated value of $1,081.25 to the Big Walnut schools by Ron Stamen. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Comments?
Just a question.
Okay.
67,000 from Sunbury Meadows, is that a donation or is that the millage?
It is the millage, but the way that it's set up is it was done in coordination with, I believe, the auditor of state in our recommendation years ago. So it is the millage, yes, but it's done as a donation from that organization to us. And it's actually, this is the second payment of that. We received $77,000 in the fall.
And are those, how does that work in terms of arrears cycle? Is this like for the year 18, 19?
So this portion is the first half of valuation of 2019, and
Okay.
we'll receive the second. So property taxes are on that calendar year, and we collect them on the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I think we're good to go.
Okay, Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes. Item 13 is the Human Resources Report. And Mark, if you wouldn't mind joining us again.
Yeah, it should just stay right up here for you. A couple of items here this evening. I'll just kind of run through the items in section 13 here. Under 13.1, we're requesting that you approve the OPSI 696 contract. This is our union contract for our food services for the next 2 years. Certainly appreciate the work that our team has done with that. Appreciate Angie, Jeremy, Ron, and our support from Bricker and Eckler as well in looking through all of the legalities of things, especially during these times. And appreciate the quick and efficient process in working with our 696 for this and recommending approval. They have ratified this as of last week, and so it would require your ratification tonight through your approval to be able to make this take effect July 1st. Under 13.2, we have two teacher assistants requesting leave of absence. They will be doing their student teaching here in the fall, and we'll be right here in Big Walnut doing their student teaching. So we're excited to see them take that next step in their careers this coming fall. And under 13.3, we have the administrative contracts that are up for renewal. So you'll see the list there for renewing contracts going into next year. 13.4, the same thing, but for our certified teaching staff. The next step, according to their union contract, on renewal for their contracts going into next year. Under 13.5, just an adjustment for a supplemental going into next year. And then 13.6, noting the following stipends for this past year. They have completed all of the requirements under the criteria for supporting the Ohio Blended Cohort or Collaborative, which, if you recall, is part of that Schoology process where they are helping to develop lesson plans, and then because of that, our teachers then can tap into all of those lesson plans for free across the state. And then 13.7, just recognizing those resignations effective at the end of this past year. And certainly wish each of these the best as they move closer to home, consider their career options on some things, and or are accepting their first teaching job. So congratulations to each of these, and certainly wish each of them well.
Any questions or comments for Mark on the Human Resources Report? Thank you, Mark. Item 13.1, it's recommended the board approve the negotiated agreement between OAPSE and AFSCME Local 4, AFL-CIO 696, and the Big Walnut Board of Education effective July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2022. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Leanna. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sherry. So I know Mark just kind of gave us the quick rundown here. I didn't know if there are any additional thoughts or comments on the contract.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to emphasize my appreciation for the adjustments here related to healthcare costs and some of the things that this particular union's doing, similar to 3 of our 4 unions, to really help us in probably the most uncontrollable cost category that we have that impacts our ability to not just serve the district, but also compensate our staff and employees fairly. And I would really love to see all 4 of our unions come to an agreement on that. It needs to happen. Jeremy.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes. Item 13.2, it's recommended the board approve the following leave of absences. Brittany Mabbitt, teaching assistant from August 17, 2020 to November 20, 2020. Jarrett Wampler, teaching assistant from August 17, 2020 to December 4, 2020. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments, questions?
Good luck.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 13.3, it's board.
President, can we move for consent agenda for items 13.3 inclusive through 13.7?
So there's a motion on the floor for consent related to items 13.3 through 13.7. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. So Jeremy, you can go ahead and call the consent vote whenever you're ready.
Okay. Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Fuji,
Yes.
Ms. Dorsch,
Yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
and Mr. Schneider.
Yes. Item 14, scheduling of next board meeting. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is July 23rd, 2020, right here in the Big Walnut Local School Administrative Office, remembering that we may or may not be limited to size limitations at that point in time. And we will still be streaming on the district website no matter what that looks like at that point in time. Item 15.1, it's
Sorry, before you
yeah, I'm sorry.
Before you move on from 14, I just wanted to clarify, So I'd asked last meeting about availability for July 8th and 9th in case it was needed. Doug Swartz has indicated that we will not need it for athletics. I didn't know if we still wanted to hold it to wait and see what happens with the governor's announcement. If so, I do still need some availability from a couple folks. If you could just let me know. We were looking at morning meetings, 7:30 a.m. on either the 8th or 9th. So if you can just let me know if you're available either or both of those days, and then we can hold something.
And at the,
available, and I
Both?
would suggest that you hold.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard from you, so thank you for that.
I forget, did I get back with you?
You did.
Okay, I was just double checking. It's been one of those weeks. So, okay. No, thanks for bringing that up. I'd forgotten about that. Item 15.1, it's recommended the board to enter executive session to consider the appointment of a public employee or official, to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, consider the employment of a public employee, and to discuss confidential information related to negotiations with other political subdivisions regarding requests for economic development assistance, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulation of state statutes. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Leanna. Jeremy?
Mr. Fuji?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Crowell?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorsch?
Yes.
And Mr. Schneider?
Yes. We do not anticipate coming back into public session to take any action tonight after executive session. So thank you all for viewing along with us at home, and have a good night.